Welcome to our session number 14, which is technically 14, 15A, and 15B. It's all horn stuff. So I compressed 3 hours into 6 minutes because this part is really tedious. There's a lot of little details that I worked on, and watching it any slower would just make you stop watching. So, but anyway, this time I actually used some reference material. I did a Google image search for animal horns because I wanted to see how the segments stacked on top of each other and what they looked like. So I got a bunch of Google image photos and cropped them together in Photoshop and imported them into ZBrush so I could have a reference while I was sculpting. But before I got into the segments of the horns, I added some more eyeball things to sort of reinforce the asymmetry of the Monster Cutie, but also because that's sort of the aesthetic. Little eyeballs and things inserted where you don't expect them to be. So in this section, I'm actually going back over the segments of the horns and cutting them in a little bit more deeply with the Damien standard brush so that the segments stand out a little bit more when you zoom out or do the squint test. And this took a while. So the other thing I'm doing is going across those segments to give it sort of more of a tree bark texture. And to do that, I'm using the Damien standard brush again, but with a very large radius and low pressure. So that's a fun little technique that I like to do. It sort of looks like tree bark on the underneath. I wanted to do this treatment on the underside of the horns, just to differentiate the underside from the top side. And this is the beginning of session number 15A, and I'm going back over the bottom ridges of the segments with the clay buildup brush at a very low radius and just building up those ridges to have to make it like a knurled, barky texture. Like if you see a deer horn from a deer skull, when the transition from the horn to the actual skull, there's a bunch of knurling at the base of the horn. So I'm trying to mimic that texture with the clay buildup brush. And this takes a long time. So it's a lot of buildup toward the edge, but I also try to feather it into the flat of the segment. So that's what's happening here. It kind of looks like tree bark almost. And my intention was just to do all this in one go, but I had to split it into 2 pieces because at the end of the first hour of this texturing part, I really had to go to the bathroom. So I didn't expect to, but sometimes you have to go to the bathroom. But all of this was done the same day. So it took 2 hours to finish off all this fun texturing. And this is still the level 1 detail phase. When I subdivide it again, I'm going to go back over it with the Damien standard brush and make some deeper cuts, which you'll see in this segment, because now we've switched to 15B. So I'm still going up the ridge of the horns. This part is spirally somehow. It's all done in one cut all the way around. So you're gonna see me focus on one side and then go to the other side. And it looks fast right now, but imagine stretching this out for an hour. I'm sure there are procedural ways to generate that type of texture. I'm sure there are alphas and brushes out there that can make this easier, but there's something zen-like about sculpting stuff like this, doing it by hand. I was recording it for for this session, so I was talking while I was doing it. But normally, if I'm doing something tedious like this, I'll have music in the background and I'll be singing and dancing while I'm getting through it. So checking the overall look and going back, this is the second level of detail, so I'm going back over with the Damon Standard brush and carving in portions a little bit more deeply. Most of the focus is on the two eye sections, because it turns out that the rest of it looks pretty good to my eyes anyway. So there are some cuts that I'm going to be enhancing a little bit, making them a little bit more deep. But overall, I was pretty impressed with the way it looked, the way the ridges smoothed out when I added the subdivision. So, yep, and at this point, here is a fancy keyshot render. And the green parts are the horns, so you can see them all nice and rendered and fancy. The next session, I'm gonna finish this sucker off, concentrating on the teeth, and then overall fixing some little bits and cutting in a little bit here and there. But overall, we're getting closer, man. We're getting way close. So, if you enjoy these hour sessions, please consider becoming a patron and supporting my work. And if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe and share it with your friends and tell them how awesome it is to use ZBrush to make creepy little monsters. And I'll see you next time when we're gonna finish this thing off. And I'm running out of time to speak things, so